Are you constantly thinking about what you should or shouldn't eat and when to start your perfect diet? Have you ever given in to food binge, with the thought that you'll start fresh tomorrow? Welcome to Your Hunger Satisfied, where we discover what you are truly hungry for and learn to satisfy those deepest cravings so you can end emotional eating once and for all. Hi, I'm Peggy Dunn. I'm a licensed mental health therapist, a functional medicine health coach, and a certified life coach. And I specialize in overcoming emotional eating and weight loss. I'm also a lifelong emotional eater. So I want to provide you with information, motivation, and support so you too can learn to manage your issues with food and develop a healthy relationship with yourself and with food. Please take a moment and let me know where and when you are watching this. I would really appreciate that. Do you ever feel a little crazy around food? That's what we're going to be addressing today. You are definitely not alone. There's a lot going on in the world, especially today in these stressful times. That crazy feeling around food that I'm talking about is that feeling like you are just totally out of control around food. Like no matter how hard you try to hold yourself back, you eventually end up eating that entire cake when nobody's looking, or eating in the car on the way home to fix dinner. It used to drive me crazy, and I'm talking absolutely incredibly crazy to think about all of the times and amounts of time I used to spend thinking about food. In fact, I would actually go so far as to say it resembled an addiction. It completely dominated my mental space. Some of the symptoms I experienced of feeling crazy around food include, but are not limited to, constantly thinking about what I want to eat, what I should be eating, what my next meal was going to consist of, what I'm not allowed to eat, or what foods are good or bad for you. When am I going to eat? There were times I was even dreaming of where I was going to go on the weekend for my meal out. Have any of you felt or feel the same way? hmm Maybe you're stressed out, feeling lonely, anxious, or sad, and all of a sudden you find you've gone off your diet again. And you feel like it's off to the races. There's nothing going to stop you from eating that ice cream tonight, or munching on those chips while you fix dinner, or think about what you were going to order for dinner, or when or where your next meal will be. Then, of course, because you ate off plan, you splurged, or even just plain went all out crazy in your eating. You begin thinking something like, today went to hell in a handbasket. I might as well eat anything I want because tomorrow I'm going to start fresh. I'll start my diet again tomorrow. Here's what I want you to understand. No amount of willpower or self control is going to fix this problem. There is no specific diet or way of eating that will fix this problem. That's because it's a mindset problem. Trying to fix it with even more self control or by trying to find just the right diet or way of eating is going to leave you feeling as frustrated as you felt or maybe even feeling right now. I want to explain what I mean when I say the word diet so you can begin to understand why diets don't work. A diet doesn't necessarily mean one of those fads or plans like Weight Watchers, Atkins, paleo, keto, South Beach, or whatever. Dieting simply means a way of eating that we are emotionally attached to. I'm going to repeat that. A diet is simply a way of eating that we are emotionally attached to. So, what do I mean by emotionally attached to? What I mean is, if you think, if I eat this way, I'm doing good, I'm okay. But if I eat this way, I feel bad, I did wrong, I feel miserable, and I'll verbally beat myself up for hours, sometimes even days. Or worse, I may tell myself I am bad, I have no self control. Whenever we are feeling guilty or ashamed because of our food choices, basically, whenever we feel like we've crossed that line of not doing good, not being okay, doing wrong, we essentially send ourselves the message my diet is going to start tomorrow, so I'll better eat it now. This attitude, in its essence, is giving ourselves permission to eat everything in sight or all the foods that just cross our minds. Because tomorrow, of course, will be different. Oh, how many times I've said that and ended up gaining weight before I even started the diet or new way of eating. I know it's really, really tempting to think tomorrow I'm really going to stick to it. I'll be good come Monday. Then I'm going to stick to the diet and everything will be great. But guess what? That day never comes. If you're really honest with yourself, you know from experience that the more tightly you grip on to that illusion of self control, the harder you begin to swing in the other direction eventually. Restraint and control are not the answer to your food problems. The goal is not more self control, more restraint. What if the goal was not to eat with more self control and restraint, but instead, what if the goal was to try to eat with sanity, eat with peace, to eat normally? What a novel concept. So, to further explain, I want to talk about the emotional associations with food choices. A diet in this context is not just a list of foods to eat or to not eat or avoid. It encompasses the emotional connections we form with certain foods or eating patterns. For instance, you might feel a sense of accomplishment or virtue when you stick to your chosen diet, like I do every time I have a salad. Or conversely, guilt or self reproach when you deviate from it. I know I did. These emotional associations can become powerful drivers of our eating behaviors, which they also become powerful drivers about how we feel about ourselves. We may be feeling good or bad about ourselves depending on how we label food. We ate good food, we ate bad food. Or it may become our dietary identity. People often construct their identities around the way they eat. They might identify as a vegan, paleo enthusiast, someone who follows a low carb diet. This dietary identity becomes intertwined with their self concept. Many diets encourage this all or nothing approach. For example, if you're strictly following your diet or completely off track, this black and white thinking can create a cycle of rigid adherence, followed by guilt. Indulgence perpetuating the emotional attachment to your way of eating. Again, this may strongly affect your judgment, self judgment, and self worth. When you're emotionally attached to a specific diet, it's common to judge yourself based on your adherence to it. If you're good in sticking to your diet, you feel a boost in your self worth. On the other hand, if you cheat or stray from the diet, can lead to feelings of self criticism and a negative impact on your self esteem. The emotional attachment to a diet often leads to a fear of failure. You're afraid of disappointing yourself if you can't stick to or maintain your diet just right. This fear of failure creates anxiety and stress around food, making it more difficult to make balanced and sustainable choices. This emotional attachment to a diet can lead to psychological stress, the constant preoccupation with food, weight, adherence to your chosen way of eating. This significantly impacts your mental well being, leading to anxiety, obsession, even depression. This leads to a yo yo way of dieting. You strictly follow the diet until you inevitably deviate. And then guilt and shame drive you to restart the diet. The repetitive cycle can be emotionally exhausting and counterproductive in achieving long term health and well being. What actually happens is we become emotionally attached to food, to the diet. We tie it to our view of ourselves, our identity. I've done this myself for decades. I had long forgotten that food is simply fuel. It doesn't have all the emotional meaning that I had attached to it. The only thing thinking about food did for me was allowed me to not think about the uncomfortable feelings that I did not want to deal with. And that, my friends, is why we call it emotional eating. I mean, think about it. We call it emotional eating. What we're really doing is eating our emotions instead of dealing with them. Hence the term emotional eating. I can't believe how long it took for me to realize that. And interestingly enough, that was the same moment that I began to be willing to deal with those uncomfortable feelings from the past. Understand that a diet is not just about the food you eat, but also the emotions and identity that we attach to it. Breaking free from this emotional attachment can lead to a more balanced, flexible, and sustainable approach to eating. So let's redefine your relationship with food to one based on self compassion, balance, enjoyment of food without rigid food rules, or emotional turmoil. So this week, I want you to think about the most normal eater that you know, somebody who just naturally eats, leaves dessert on their plate, and eats an appropriate amount of food for their body type. Someone who just eats without really thinking about it or trying too hard. Here's some questions I want you to ask yourself. What are they doing that you're not doing? More importantly, how are they thinking that you're not thinking? What's going on in their minds? How is their relationship with food different than your relationship with food? That is the key to creating a normal relationship with food. It's the thinking, not the behaviors, that's going to make the ultimate difference for you. I'll give you a hint about one thing that's different between you and them. It ain't willpower. Normal eaters aren't trying to control themselves around food all the time. They naturally don't want to eat handfuls of peanut butter in one sitting because that would make them feel kind of sick. So remember, feeling crazy around food is a mindset problem, not a behavior problem in and of itself. That is why trying to only control your eating and exercise is not enough. It's the thinking that's going to make a difference for you in the long run. So until next time, make it a joyful week.